Hello and welcome to this tutorial on embedding grant figures in text with Word. I routinely found working with trainees and even many collaborators of mine who struggle with getting clear, properly sized figures into their grant documents. And what I want to share with you in this video is strategies that have worked with me over the past 20 years or so of grant writing. And the trick is to leverage this property in Word called text boxes that I'll step through in the next couple of minutes. We start with two files. First, this is an arbitrary grant document in Word text. And over on the left-hand side here is a vectorized image that I created in Illustrator. And when I say vectorized, it means that each one of these arrows and texts is an entity that I can zoom in to arbitrary resolution and retain the information without it getting blurry. The contrast to a vectorized image is a rasterized one, which is in dots per inch. That will get blurrier as you zoom in. And our goal is to have as high of a resolution of an image in the final document as possible, subject to file sizes and compatibility. So we'll begin over here with the Word document. And what I first will do is create a text box in this document where the figure and the associated figure caption will reside. So we go to Insert, Text Box, Draw Text Box. And we simply put it wherever we would like. Next, we need to change the default properties of the text box by double-clicking it. For me personally, I don't like lines all the way around my text boxes, so I say no line. And we will right-click on the text wrapping option. And I ordinarily do this either square or tight is fine because it's a rectangular box. And that now pushes the text back from behind the text box and creates space to insert the image. Also, the default text box sizes here are not symmetric and a little bit too big for my taste. I often do 0.02 all the way around. All right, and now we have a text box that is located in the Word file and will be the place where the figure goes. I have a couple things to add about text boxes. First is this notion of an anchor here. This is where the text box is placed relative to. And if I right-click again and set the more layout options, I think is where it is. There's a couple of characteristics of text boxes to be aware of, in particular, the defaults that come across in Word. The default for Word is that this text box is going to move with the text, and it moves with the text relative to the anchor. In other words, if this paragraph in the back here moves down, the anchor will move and the text will move with it. See it moving down? Now, it doesn't have to be this way. We can move the anchor, and now it will move with respect to the bottom paragraph rather than the top one. So the same thing will happen here. Goes down, comes back up. But if I do that same thing with the anchor up here, that paragraph's not going to move relative to this one and it stays fixed. So that's what the anchor is about. Move the anchor around as needed. Now, if we don't want the position of the text box to move, we unclick this, and then the anchor will change as the text moves. So this should work. There we go. So now I'm turning, it stays fixed. And so it's updating as the text moves around. So depending upon where you are in the grant, you may or may not want the figure to bounce around. If you've ever struggled with a document where it seems that the figures are arbitrarily appearing or disappearing on different pages. It all relates to the anchor and the settings that you have on the box or the object in the file. This is early in a grant for me, so I'm going to just change that back before I forget. To move object with text. The other option here is to lock the anchor, which it means always keeping the anchor on wherever you have it located during that time so it won't bounce around. So these are important tools to have control over your figures in an embedded document. I want to put the figure caption in with the figure, so I'm just going to put a carriage return here so that I have some space to put in the figure. Now let's talk about the visual element here. As I said, this is a vectorized image, and I'm going to save it as a vectorized image to my desktop as an AI file. I could save it as a PDF, behaves exactly the same. Those are both vectorized image formats. And then I'm also going to export as a high resolution PNG file. I'll explain the advantages and disadvantages of each one. A PNG, though, is a rasterized image format. Export. And for me, an acceptable file size to resolution compromise is 600 points per pixels per inch. That should also be on the desktop. So what we'll do here now is insert the picture. Either we're going to do it two ways so that you can see. I'll insert the vectorized picture, and then I'll insert the rasterized picture so you can appreciate the difference. Picture from file. You'll note that importing an AI file in is not a default option, as it doesn't recognize it as a picture file. I'll have to select all files to be able to insert it, but it should recognize it. There it is. And what I'll note here is that I made the text box large enough so that the image goes in at 100%. So this is exactly the size of that I saved the file at. It's exactly the size of all the fonts and everything here, and it hasn't been enlarged. If I want to enlarge it, I can, but the key here is on the size and position. It's at 100%. So this is how we don't get arbitrary growth or shrinkage of the figure in a given text box. If I delete this and shrink this text box down below, I do the same thing. I believe it's going to shrink it. There. So now it has shrunken it. The default is to shrink the file. And now if I do the same thing, size and position, it's at a fraction of the size. I can change this to 100%. Now it's outside of the text box. But if I'm trying to get the text box just to the size to get it to cover the figure, about there. And now I'm back at 100% where I was before. So what I put on the top was the PNG file. I'm going to insert the AI file, the vectorized file right underneath it. Okay. You can see this one off the box. Drag this down. One of the parts that's tricky is once you insert the figure, it's very hard to get the text back. It's just what I'm going to do is undo this, put a couple carriage returns, and then reinsert. Files. So rasterized on the top, vectorized on the bottom. For NIH grants, they let you do 9-point. And I will put in some text here. Normally, I like to justify the figure captions, bold it, so forth. And so now we're all set. So this version would be ready to go. It will stay fixed or not, depending on how you have the settings of the text box. The final thing that I'll show is if I export this now as a PDF, what it looks like, what these two images look like in the export. Save as PDF. Go to the desktop. I'm going to open this in Acrobat. And what I'm drawing attention to is how the two different versions look. So at this level of resolution, they're virtually indistinguishable from one another. But if I zoom in, very much in, I can start to see the pixels at 600 dpi. This is the rasterization. Let's go to the vectorized image. Always crystal clear because it retains that vector information in the PDF. And so overall, the vectorized version would be preferred. However, what I have found is that as you get really into this, Word has a tendency to rasterize arbitrarily vectorized images depending on the image, and it is very unpredictable when it does this arbitrary rasterization. And when the rasterization occurs, it is very blurry and it will look like the image has been corrupted. Nominally, this is supposed to be set in the preferences with the edit button here. You can see here that the defaults here, it says do not compress images in file, default resolution 220 ppi, which is terrible. However, what I have found, if I even set this to high fidelity, and I even set this radio box to do not compress images in file, and then I click save, there can be a somewhere between 10 and 25% probability of this vectorized image being arbitrarily rasterized to very low resolution. I can try saving it. I'll see if it happens with this version or not. So I just closed it. Open it up again. And of course, this time it will not. Here it's retained, but it is possible that as I add additional figures, that nice vectorized version may become rasterized. So keep an eye on it. I think it's a bug in Word. Perhaps it is getting fixed or has maybe already gotten fixed. But if you see arbitrary pixelated images appearing by putting in your vectorized images, my solution, my workaround has been to put in a high resolution PNG and call it a day. Good enough, certainly for printouts and even a reasonable level of zoom on the screen. And that's it. Everything you need to know about embedding grant figures in text with Word.